Ambassador Viral Cathani had touched thousands of hands in her long career. Her species, the Scytherin, could read the energy that flowed through every living being. One touch told her everything. She could feel emotions, intentions, and secrets. This gift made the Scytherin perfect peacekeepers for the Galactic Union. For 10,000 years, they had kept order among 4,000 different species across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Viral stood in the grand, welcome hall of Station Orthex 7. The walls curved upward like the inside of a shell, decorated with lights from 100 different worlds. Today, she would greet the human delegation. Humans were new to galactic politics. They had joined the Union only 200 years ago. The Union classified them as Tier 6 emergent species. The lowest rank, they were considered clever but ordinary. Their bodies held no special powers. Their minds produced no psychic energy. They were, in official terms, completely unremarkable. Commander Marcus Cole walked toward her. He was tall for a human, with dark hair going gray at the temples and eyes the color of Earth's oceans. He smiled the way humans often did, showing his teeth in a gesture that still made some species nervous. "Ambassador Cathani," he said, extending his hand. "Thank you for welcoming us." Viral reached out. This was routine. She had done it countless times before. Their palms touched. Fire exploded through her. Nervous system Viral gasped and pulled her hand back. Her skin, which normally glowed soft blue, flickered with patterns of distress she had not displayed since childhood. Heat rushed up her arm and spread through her body. Not physical heat. Something else. Something that roared like a star being born. Marcus Cole blinked at her. His face showed only confusion. "Ambassador, is everything all right?" She forced herself to breathe. "Yes, forgive me. A moment of discomfort. Nothing more." But it was not nothing. It was the furthest thing from nothing she had ever experienced. The ceremony continued. Viral smiled and nodded and said the correct words. Inside, her mind was screaming. What she had felt was impossible. Humans were null class. They had no energy signature. Every scientific study confirmed this. Every scan agreed. Yet Marcus Cole burned like a furnace. And when she looked at the other humans in his delegation, she sensed it in them too. Fainter in some, brighter in others. But present in all of them. A fire that should not exist. She excused herself as soon as protocol allowed. In her private quarters, she activated a secure channel to the Scytherin homeworld. The face of High Counselor Draven appeared, his ancient features creased with concern. "Ambassador, what troubles you?" Viral told him everything. The handshake, fire, the energy that no human should possess. When she finished, silence stretched between the stars. "You are certain?" Draven asked finally. "I felt it myself. There can be no mistake. This is ... unprecedented. You must investigate further, observe, report. Tell no one what you have sensed, and if I confirm it. If all humans carry this power..." Draven's expression grew dark. "Then we will face decisions that have not been made in 10,000 years. Be careful, Viral. Be very careful." The channel closed. Viral sat alone in the darkness, feeling the echo of that impossible fire still tingling in her palm. Over the following days, she watched the humans. She followed them through corridors and meeting rooms. She brushed past them in crowds, stealing moments of contact. Each touch confirmed her fears. The fire was real. It lived in all of them, sleeping just beneath the surface of their ordinary-seeming bodies. Some burned brighter than others. A young engineer named Sarah Chen blazed like a torch. An elderly diplomat named Roberts barely flickered. Marcus Cole fell somewhere in between, his flames steady and strong, but not the strongest she sensed. What did it mean? Why had no one noticed before? The questions gnawed at her. The answer came at a diplomatic reception. 3 nights later, the grand ballroom sparkled with representatives from dozens of species. Viral stood in a shadowed corner, watching the humans mingle with creatures they had known for only 2 centuries. They seemed so small compared to some of the beings present. So fragile, a young humanoid barely more than a boy, moved through the crowd carrying a tray of drinks. He was nervous. Viral could see it in the way his hands trembled slightly. He turned too quickly and collided with someone behind him. The tray clattered to the floor. The boy stumbled backward into the chest of Ambassador Korath of the Veshan. Imperium Viral's heart stopped. The Veshans were ancient beyond measure. Their bodies were made of living crystal that pulsed with inner light. They were classified as Resonance Prime, the highest psychic tier in the galaxy. Korath stood 8 feet tall, his crystalline form shimmering with power that had taken millennia to develop. Korath reached out to steady the boy. His crystal hand touched the human's shoulder, and Korath flickered. It lasted less than a second. A brief stutter in the ambassador's inner light, like a candle caught in a sudden wind. No one else seemed to notice. Korath released the boy, made a sound that passed for polite dismissal, and moved away. But Viral saw. She saw the flicker. And worse, she saw the expression that passed across Korath's ancient, crystalline face. Fear, one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, had touched an unremarkable human boy. And for one instant, that power had wavered. Viral left the reception without saying goodbye to anyone. She walked to the observation deck and stared out at the stars. Her mind raced with implications she was only beginning to understand. The humans did not just carry fire inside them. They carried something that could shake the foundations of beings far more powerful than themselves. Something that made ancient creatures afraid. She thought about the Wunyan's classification system. Null class. No detectable powers. Completely unremarkable. Either the system was wrong, or someone had lied. And lies that big did not happen by accident. Behind her, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere among them, 4,000 species went about their lives, unaware that the galaxy's newest members might be something far more than anyone had ever imagined. Viral pressed her palm against the cold glass. She could still feel that impossible fire. The humans were waking up, and she was terrified of what they might become when they opened their eyes. Counselor Drath Morvex was older than most stars. His body had grown thin and fragile with the centuries, but his mind remained sharp as broken glass. He walked through corridors that had not seen visitors in 600 years. The forbidden archives lay deep beneath the Sithran homeworld, sealed behind doors that opened only for those who carried the heaviest secrets. The vault recognized his touch. The locks released with a sound like a dying star, a warning built into the very metal. Turn back, it seemed to say. Some knowledge should stay buried. But Drath had no choice. Ambassador Catheni's report demanded answers. And the answers, he knew, lay somewhere in these dusty halls. 1 week later, Viral stood before him in his private chamber. She had traveled across 3 systems to be here. The urgency in her eyes matched the fear in his ancient heart. "Tell me what you found," she said without greeting. Dratch gestured for her to sit. He lowered himself into his own chair, joints creaking like old wood. "What I found changes everything we believed about humanity, about the Union itself, about why the Union was created. I need to understand." "You do." He paused, gathering strength for words he had hoped never to speak. "What you sensed in the humans has a name. The old texts call it the Ember. The Ember. A fire that burns without consuming. Energy that creates itself endlessly, growing stronger with time." I've leaned forward. 10,000 years ago, when the Union was young, we had a classification above Resonance Prime. A theoretical tier that was never meant to be filled. What was it called? Resonance Absolute. Beings whose bioenergy did not simply exist within them, but generated. Endlessly, self-sustaining, self-amplifying, growing without limit. His voice dropped to a whisper. "The archives contain exactly 1 entry under this classification. Show me." It was redacted, erased. Deliberately forgotten. Viral shook her head. "Nothing is deliberately forgotten. Someone always remembers, yes." Draft's eyes met hers. "I remember, not from the archives. From stories passed down among my predecessors, whispers in the dark, warnings never to be ignored." He rose, and moved to the window. Outside, the Scytheran capital stretched to the horizon, buildings glowing softly in the evening light. There was once a species of resonance absolute. They did not need weapons. They did not need ships. Their very presence warped reality around them. They inspired worship simply by existing. Wars broke out between other species fighting for the right to serve them. Turned back to face her. They nearly tore the galaxy apart. Not through malice. Through simple existence. They were too powerful to live among lesser beings without causing destruction. What happened to them? They burned out. Sacrificed themselves to stop a greater threat. But before they died, they had children. And those children were sent away. Hidden. Placed on a small blue world at the edge of the galaxy. The truth hit viral like a physical blow. Earth. Earth was not discovered by Union scouts 200 years ago. It was found 10,000 years ago. The founders of the Union made a choice. They isolated the planet. Forbade all contact. They believed that if humanity never touched other species, never mingled their energy with the galactic whole, the ember would remain dormant forever. But it didn't work. Drath's voice was heavy with regret. 200 years of contact. 200 years of humans traveling the stars, meeting other species, experiencing the galaxy. The ember was waiting. Waiting for stimulus. And now it is awakening. Viro stood silent for a long moment. Her mind struggled to accept what she was hearing. The humans she knew were scientists and traders, diplomats and engineers. They built things. They explored. They made terrible jokes and laughed too loud. They were not gods. "What do you want me to do?" she asked finally. "Return to Station Orthx 7. Maintain your cover. Observe. We need to know how far the awakening has progressed." Dreth handed her a small device. "This will allow secure communication. Report only to me, and if the awakening is complete, if the humans have become what their ancestors were." Drath was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible. "We sealed Earth once, Ambassador. We can do it again. But understand this. If the Ember has truly awakened, if the humans have begun to realize what they are," he paused, "then there may not be a force in this galaxy that can stop them." Viral took the device and left without another word. The journey back to Station Orthx 7 took 3 days. She spent most of it staring at the stars through her cabin window, thinking about fire and fear and 10,000 years of lies. The Union had built its peace on a foundation of hidden truth. The humans had been classified as null class, not because they lacked power, but because acknowledging their power was too dangerous. Better to pretend they were ordinary. Better to hope the fire stayed asleep, but hope was not a strategy. And fires, once lit, did not go quietly back to darkness. She arrived at the station to find it in chaos. Alarms blared through the corridors. Security teams rushed past her, weapons drawn. Viro grabbed a passing officer and demanded an explanation. "Trade dispute," the officer said breathlessly. The Vexans and Korath started shooting. Casualties on both sides. Civilians caught in the crossfire. How many dead? At least 30, including a human child. Viral released the officer and ran toward the main atrium. She pushed through crowds of frightened travelers, past overturned market stalls and shattered display cases. The smell of smoke hung in the air. She burst into the atrium and stopped. "Commander." Marcus Cole stood at the center of the vast space. His arms were spread wide. His eyes were closed. An energy poured off him in visible waves, making the air itself shimmer like heat rising from summer pavement around him. In a perfect circle, every Vexan and Korath soldier had collapsed. They lay on the ground without moving. Not dead, not injured, simply still. As if someone had reached into their minds, switched off their ability to fight. Marcus opened his eyes. They glowed with golden light. "No more," he said. His voice resonated through the station's metal walls, through the floor beneath Viral's feet, through her very bones. "There will be no more death here." The golden light faded. Marcus blinked, looked around in confusion. The glow vanished from his eyes, as if it had never existed. What? Double quotes, he started. What just happened? Viral stared at him. He truly did not know. He had stopped a battle with nothing but his will, with power that should not exist. And he had no idea what he had done. The ember was not just awakening, it was blazing. Back to life. And the humans had absolutely no idea what they were becoming. News of the Orthex incident spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. The official report blamed a malfunction in the station's neural dampening systems. A technical error. Nothing more. The humans were never mentioned, but the Whisper networks told a different story. They spoke of a human commander who stopped a battle with his mind. They spoke of soldiers frozen in place by invisible force. They spoke of eyes that glowed like captured suns, and on 100 different worlds. The children of Earth began to dream of fire. Marcus Cole sat in his quarters and tried to remember. The doctors had examined him for hours. Every scan came back normal. Every test showed nothing unusual. They told him the stress of the incident had caused a mental break. A dissociative episode. He should rest. He should not worry. But Marcus knew something had changed. He could feel emotions now. Not his own. The emotions of others. They pressed against his mind like colors he could almost see. The doctor's hidden concern. The nurse's exhaustion. The security guard's suspicion. All of them bled into his awareness, without permission. He knew when people were lying. The words would leave their mouths and he would feel the wrongness underneath. It's like a sour note in a song. Sometimes, late at night, he caught his reflection in the mirror. And sometimes, just for a moment, he saw something glowing behind his eyes. He began searching for answers. He accessed old databases, historical records, fragments of texts that predated the Union itself. He was not sure what he was looking for until he found it. The first flame. The name appeared again, and again in ancient writings. A species of incredible power. A people who burned within her light. They had protected the galaxy from something terrible. Then they had vanished. Marcus read the stories over and over. He felt something stirring in his chest. Something that recognized these words even though his mind had never seen them before. Viral watched him from the shadows. She had been following him for days, gathering information, preparing herself for what she knew she must do. The High Council had sent a containment assessment team to the station. She recognized them for what they were. The first step toward military action. If humanity was deemed a threat, the Union would respond. Sanctions? Isolation, perhaps? Worse, but she could not stop thinking about what Marcus had done in the atrium. He had stopped a massacre. He had saved lives without killing anyone. Was that the action of a monster? She made her choice. She found Marcus alone in a corridor near the observation deck. He turned as she approached, and she saw recognition flash in his eyes. Ambassador. You've been following me? Yes. Why? She took a breath. Because you are in danger? Because there are people coming who see you as a threat? Because if you do not learn to control what is happening to you, others will decide to control you instead. Marcus studied her face for a long moment. You know what I'm becoming? Not exactly. No one does. But I know that your people carry something inside them. Something ancient. Something that the galaxy forgot on purpose. The first flame. Viral nodded slowly. You've been doing research? I had too. The changes are getting stronger. He looked at his hands. Last night, I stopped my own heart. I was lying in bed feeling too much, and I just wished I could stop feeling. And my heart stopped. For 6 seconds. Then I wished it to start again, and it did. Viral felt cold fear wash through her. You must be careful. You must learn control. How? No one can teach me. No one even knows what I am. I don't know. But I think... She hesitated. I think you were always this... All of you. Your people just never had a reason to remember. An alarm cut through the station. Emergency lights began to flash. Marcus and Viral turned to the nearest display. Screen as a broadcast filled the air. An asteroid had. It's been detected. massive, extinctional level. It was heading directly toward the colony world of New Valencia. 4 million people lived there. Impact would occur in 72 hours. There was no time for evacuation. There was no weapon in the Union arsenal powerful enough to stop it. Marcus felt something move through the station's walls. Not physical movement. Something deeper. Thousands of minds crying out. Human minds. Not in despair. In determination, we have to do something, he said. Viral shook her head. There is nothing that can be done. The mass is too great. The speed is too fast. Mathematics does not lie. I'm not talking about mathematics. Marcus turned to her, and his eyes flickered gold. I'm talking about us. What do you mean? He was not sure how to explain. The feeling came from somewhere beyond words. Somewhere in the fire that was growing stronger inside him every hour. When I stopped those soldiers, I wasn't alone. I felt something. A connection. Like I was drawing strength from everywhere at once. He looked toward the walls, toward the world beyond them. If one human can stop a fight, what can thousands do? What can millions do? You cannot be serious. But he was already moving. He walked to the center of the corridor and closed his eyes. He reached out with something that was not his hands. Touched something that was not physical space. Brothers, sisters, children of Earth, do you hear me? The words did not leave his mouth. They traveled through channels older than language, deeper than thought. They rippled outward across the station, across the system, across the void between stars, and from everywhere. The answers came back. We hear you. We're coming. Viral watched in astonishment as transport. Ships began diverting toward New Valencia. Not military vessels. Not rescue ships. Passenger transports. Cargo haulers. Mining shuttles. Anything that could carry bodies. Thousands of humans were answering a call only they could hear. Teachers and doctors. Miners and merchants. Families with children. Old people who had never traveled beyond their home systems. All of them changing course, drawn by a voice that resonated in their blood. What are you going to do? Viral whispered. Marcus opened his eyes. For the first time since the atrium, he did not look afraid. What we were made for. The ships kept coming. From every direction, every corner of human space, they converged on a single point. A world about to die. A people who refused to accept the impossible. Viral had spent her entire career studying species across the galaxy. She had seen power in many forms. The Thessians with their crystal minds, the Korath with their warrior fury. The ancient races who commanded, forces beyond ordinary understanding. But she had never seen anything like. This she had never seen ordinary people answer. A call to save strangers simply because they could. She did not understand humans, but watching them move towards certain danger without hesitation. She realized she wanted to. The Union's observation satellites recorded everything. In the centuries that followed, the footage would be studied and analyzed and debated and worshipped. But for those who watched in real time, for the millions who held their breath across 1,000 worlds, there were no words sufficient to describe what they witnessed. Only this truth remained. On the day the asteroid came for New Valencia, humanity answered 40,000–7,000 humans gathered on the planet's surface. They came from transports that landed in fields and parking lots in any open space large enough to hold them. They came without weapons. They came without tools. Most of them did not even understand why they had come. They only knew that something had called them, something ancient and undeniable. And they could not refuse. Marcus Cole stood among them. He felt their energy surrounding him like a heartbeat. Each person carried their own small flame. Alone, those flames were nothing special. A spark. A flicker. But together, connected, sharing their fire with one another, they became something else entirely. Alone, each human was a match. Together, they were a sun. The gathering began without words. No one gave orders. No one organized the crowd. People simply moved to where they needed to be, guided by instinct older than memory. They formed chains, holding hands with strangers. The chains became circles. The circles became patterns that seemed random until you looked from above. From above, the pattern was clear. They had formed the symbol of the first flame, and then they began to sing, not with their voices. With their energy? With the ember that had slept inside humanity for 10,000 years? The song had no melody that ears could hear. It was a harmonic resonance, vibration that built and grew as each person added their flame to the whole. The air began to glow golden around them, for million. Colonists watched from their homes and shelters. They had been told to prepare for the end. Emergency broadcasts had explained that nothing could be done. The asteroid was too big, too fast, too powerful. They should spend their final hours with loved ones. They should make peace with whatever gods they believed in instead. They watched 47,000 strangers hold hands and create light. The asteroid entered the atmosphere. It was 12 kilometers of iron and ice, moving at 40 kilometers per second. The force of its impact would crack continents. The dust of its destruction would block the sun for decades. Everything on the surface would die. The humans looked up, and they pushed. Every satellite recording the event went white. The sensors overloaded. For 37 seconds, nothing could be seen. When the instruments recalibrated and the picture returned, the asteroid was gone, not destroyed. Not deflected, unmade. Converted entirely into light and harmless particles that drifted down onto New Valencia, like golden snow. The colonists stepped out of their shelters and looked up in wonder as the sky rained fire that did not burn. Children caught the glowing particles in their hands. Old people wept, without understanding why. The world that should have ended was painted in soft gold light. On the surface, 47,000 humans collapsed. Marcus was among them. The energy had drained from his body like water from a broken vessel. He lay on his back, staring at the golden sky, feeling empty and complete at the same time. Not all of them survived. 312 humans gave too much. Their flames burned too bright, and they burned out entirely. They died with smiles on their faces. They died saving for million strangers. They died exactly as the first flame had died 10,000 years before. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Then the reactions began. The Thessians fell to their knees in their crystal temples. They recited prayers 10,000 years old, prayers to gods they had thought were myth. The words spoke of fire that protected, light that shielded, flame that loved. The Vexan Consortium immediately moved to establish trade alliances with human colonies. Their merchants understood power when they saw it. Better to be friends with such people than enemies. The Korath Dominion quietly began withdrawing their fleets from human-occupied space. They were warriors, proud and strong, but they were not fools. You did not threaten a species that could unmake asteroids with their minds. And the Scytherin High Council convened an emergency session. Viral was present for the debate. She sat in the observer's gallery and watched the most powerful political body in the galaxy argue about the future of humanity. They saved 4 million lives, one counselor said. We should honor them. Celebrate them. Embrace them as allies. They unmade an asteroid with collective willpower, another responded. Today, they save colonies. Tomorrow, they might destroy fleets. We cannot allow such power to exist unchecked. How do you propose to check it? Did you see the recordings? They stopped an extinction event by holding hands. What weapon do you have that matches that? The arguments went back and forth. Fear against gratitude. Caution against hope. Old prejudices against new realities. Finally, Counselor Drathmore stood to speak. The chamber fell silent. Everyone knew his age. Everyone respected his wisdom. You speak of threat, he said, his voice carrying clearly despite his years. Of containment. Of control. But I watched the recordings closely. Do you know what I saw? Silence. They did not reach for weapons. They did not seek to dominate. When faced with extinction, Humans joined hands and chose to create rather than destroy. In 10,000 years of Union history, how many species can claim the same? The vote was tabled. No decision was made that day, but Drath pulled Viral aside afterward with a warning. The Union may hesitate. Others will not. There are powers in this galaxy older than our coalition. Powers that remember the first flame and fear its return. His ancient eyes were dark with worry. They are already moving. What do you mean? What powers? Drath shook his head. I have said too much already. Just know this. The miracle at New Valencia was not an ending. It was a beginning. And what comes next will test humanity in ways they cannot imagine. Viral left the council chamber with his words echoing in her mind. On a dead world at the galaxy's edge, something ancient stirred in its prison. It had slept for 10,000 years, waiting. The beings who had locked it away were long gone. Their children had forgotten. The galaxy had moved on, but the prison felt the energy from New Valencia. It tasted the ember across the void, and for the first time in millennia, the ancient thing smiled. The children have finally remembered who they are, it thought. Time to remind them what they were made to fight. The prison walls began to crack. The attack came without warning. One moment, the Union border world of Vesser Prime was a thriving hub of commerce and culture. Crystal spires rose toward twin suns. Markets bustled with traders from 100 species. Children played in parks designed by architects who thought in shapes no human mind could imagine. The next moment, the star screamed. It was a sound that echoed through every psychic frequency in the sector. A sound of pain and hunger and ancient terrible malice. The star's light began to dim as something vast and dark wrapped itself around its surface. Something was eating it. The Union's military responded instantly. Battle fleets converged from 3 systems. The most advanced weapons in galactic history turned their power against the darkness. Surrounding the star, nothing worked. Missiles passed through the shadow without effect. Energy beams were absorbed and vanished. The darkness spread, tendrils reaching toward Vesser Prime itself. The ancient records called them the Hollow, beings of anti-resonance. Creatures that existed in opposition to all life energy. They fed on light. They consumed warmth. Where they passed, only cold emptiness remained. 10,000 years ago, the first flame had sacrificed themselves to imprison the Hollow at the galaxy's edge. They had burned so bright that they burned out entirely, leaving only ash and the dormant ember in their descendants. But prisons weaken. Stars fade, and the Hollow had been waiting. 3 Union dreadnoughts engaged the shadow directly. Within minutes, all 3 were consumed. Their crews did not die. Something worse happened. They became hollow themselves, empty shells that turned their weapons on former allies. Vesser Prime began to evacuate. But there were 30 million people on the surface. There was not enough time. There were not enough ships. Marcus Cole received the distress call on station. Orthek 7. He watched the footage with Viral beside him. The darkness spreading, the star dying, the fleets falling. What are those things? He asked. The Hollow, Viral said quietly. They are why the first flame existed. Not as conquerors. As guardians, Marcus understood. The pieces of his research, the fragments of ancient text, the whispered legends, they all made sense now. His ancestors had not been God-seeking worship. They had been soldiers fighting a war too. Terrible for history to remember. A message arrived from the Scytheran High Council. The words were formal, diplomatic, carefully chosen. But their meaning was simple. Save us. Marcus thought about everything he had learned. How the Union had feared humanity. How they had isolated Earth. How they had classified his people as worthless to keep them contained. He thought about the containment assessment teams. The whispered discussions of neutralization protocols. Then he thought about Viral, who had risked everything to warn him. About the Decians, who had prayed instead of panicked. About 4 million lives on New Valencia, human and otherwise, who would have died without intervention. He looked at Viral. didn't ask for this power, I know. They didn't ask us for help. I know that too. Thought I. That's not how this works. He smiled, tired and sad and determined. We're not weapons. We're not gods. We're neighbors. And when neighbors are in danger, we answer. He closed his eyes and reached out across the void. Children of Earth, do you hear me? The darkness has returned. Our purpose has returned. Will you stand with me? The answers came from across the galaxy, from colonies and stations and ships, from soldiers and scientists and families, from the very old and the very young, from everyone who carried the ember inside them. We hear you. We stand with you. We are coming. The human fleet arrived at Thessa Prime 12 hours later. It was not a fleet of warships, transports, passenger vessels, cargo haulers, anything that could carry bodies across the stars. 900,000 humans converged on the dying system. They saw the hollow wrapped around the star. They saw the darkness spreading. They felt the cold of anti-resonance pressing against their minds, and they were not afraid. Marcus broadcast to his people. You know what we're facing? You know what happened to our ancestors? They gave everything to stop this enemy. They burned until there was nothing left. He paused. I won't lie to you. Some of us won't survive today. But our ancestors didn't fight because they were certain of victory. They fought because some things are worth fighting for. No one left. No one turned back. The humans linked their minds. 900,000 flames joining into a single blaze. The gestalt was staggering. The energy they produced together was visible across the system. A golden aurora that pushed back the darkness with its light alone. The hollow turned to face them. You are not the first flame. They hissed across frequencies that should have been silent. You are echoes, shadows, Ash. Marcus stepped forward, speaking for all humanity. We are the children of those who burned for you before. We carry their fire, their memory, their hope. And we're here to finish what they started. The ember ignited 900,000. Humans pushed their energy outward in a wave of pure light. It struck the hollow like a physical force. The darkness screamed. The star's dying light grew stronger. For a moment, it seemed the humans might simply destroy their enemy. But the hollow were not beings that could be destroyed. They were absence itself. The opposite of existence. They could only be contained. Marcus understood. He remembered the ancient texts. The first flame had not killed the hollow. They had imprisoned them, wrapped them in light so bright it became chains. We need to bind them, he sent to the others. Not destroy, contain, like our ancestors did. The humans shifted their focus. Instead of pushing against the hollow, they wrapped around them. Light wove into light. Energy braided with energy. They created a cage of pure ember, burning barriers that the darkness could not pass. The hollow fought back. They were ancient. They were powerful. They had broken free once. They would not be imprisoned again. The battle lasted for 3 hours. Some humans burned too bright. They gave everything they had and more. Their flames went out one by one. 2,000 died in the first hour. 3,000 more in the second. By the end, 17,000 humans had sacrificed themselves to strengthen the cage. But the cage held. The hollow were forced back. Compressed, contained. The bonds of light closed around them. Tighter than before, stronger than before. When the last seal locked into place, the darkness could no longer move, could no longer spread, could only wait in their new prison. Defeated by the children of those who had defeated them before. The golden light faded. 883,000 humans remained, exhausted, changed forever. But alive, the galaxy watched in silence. Then, slowly, the cheering began. 1 year later, the Union restructured. Humanity was no longer classified as Tier 6 emergent. A new category was created. Tier 0 Guardian, reserved for species whose purpose was not conquest or commerce, but protection. Viro resigned from the diplomatic corps. She now served as liaison to the Human Union Integration Council. Her job was to help bridge the gap between species, who had spent 10,000 years fearing a fire that had ultimately saved them all. Marcus stood on a balcony overlooking Earth, the planet he had fought to protect, the home whose legacy he had never understood until now. The ember burned quietly inside him, neither demanding nor dormant, just present, waiting to be needed again. A Thessian delegate approached. Her crystal form chimed softly in the evening air. "Do you understand now?" she asked. "What you were always meant to be." Marcus considered the question. He thought about power and responsibility, about fear and hope, about all the ways the galaxy had tried to keep humanity small, and all the ways they had refused to stay that way. "We're not gods," he said finally. "We're not saviors. We're just people. People who happen to carry a very old light." He smiled. "And people who decided to share it rather than hoard it." The Veshan's form flickered with something like laughter. "That," she said, "is exactly what the first flame would have said." Above them, the stars burned bright and peaceful. Somewhere in the void, the hollow waited in their prison. Somewhere else, other threats gathered their strength. The galaxy was vast and dangerous and full of darkness, but it was also full of light, and humanity had finally remembered how to shine.